In this dramatized, speculative narrative framed through the lens of long-term Hollywood relationships, the story of Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell is reimagined not as a tale of scandal in the traditional sense but as an exploration of how two people can remain deeply connected for over 4 decades while still carrying private emotional truths that never fully translate into public understanding, and the so-called awful secret. In this interpretation is not a single shocking revelation but, rather the quiet, evolving reality that long relationships often contain parallel emotional timelines that outsiders rarely perceive, where love, individuality, and personal history continue to shift even when the public image appears perfectly stable and unchanging. In this fictionalized retelling, their bond is portrayed as one built on intentional distance from institutional expectations such as marriage formalities or media-defined milestones, creating a partnership that exists in a space between tradition and independence. And over the years this structure becomes both their strength and their complexity, because while it allows freedom from conventional pressures, it also creates room for misunderstandings from those who interpret their choices through standard relationship narratives. And in this sense the secret becomes the world's inability to categorize what does not fit neatly into familiar labels. As decades pass in this imagined version, their shared life is depicted as a continuous negotiation between togetherness and individuality, where each person maintains separate creative rhythms, personal routines, and emotional processing styles, sometimes spending long stretches apart due to filming schedules or personal projects, only to reunite with a sense of familiarity that feels less like reunion and more like resuming an ongoing conversation paused in mid-sentence. And this cyclical rhythm becomes central to how their relationship sustains itself across time. In the public imagination, long-term couples are often expected to present a seamless narrative of harmony, but in this dramatized account, the more awful aspect is the recognition that even the most enduring partnerships contain moments of silence, misalignment, and unspoken thought, not as signs of failure but as natural consequences of two evolving individuals sharing a life without dissolving into one identity. And this tension becomes the hidden emotional architecture of their decades together. Within this narrative framework, their Hollywood presence amplifies the contrast between perception and reality, because while audiences see curated appearances, interviews, and occasional joint moments that suggest effortless stability, the private reality is imagined as far more nuanced, filled with decisions about boundaries, time apart, and the preservation of personal autonomy, which over time becomes a deliberate philosophy rather than a hidden complication. And what outsiders might label as secrecy is reframed as a mutual agreement to protect the interior dimensions of their relationship from overexposure. The emotional core of this story is not betrayal or revelation but endurance through complexity, suggesting that long-lasting love is less about eliminating difference and more about learning how to live alongside it without turning it into conflict. And in this sense the awful secret is ironically not something destructive but something deeply human. The knowledge that even the strongest relationships are made of imperfect, shifting parts that require constant recalibration. As the decades accumulate, the narrative emphasis shifts from youthful romance to mature companionship, where shared history becomes a stabilizing force but not a suffocating one, and where identity is preserved rather than absorbed, allowing both individuals to remain distinct while still choosing each other repeatedly in quieter, less visible ways. Ultimately, this fictionalized interpretation reframes the idea of a hidden truth into something more reflective and grounded, suggesting that what the public often interprets as mystery or secrecy in long-term celebrity relationships may simply be the ordinary complexity of two people who have learned to balance intimacy with independence over time, and that the most awful misunderstanding may be assuming that longevity must always look simple from the outside when in reality it is sustained by layers of patience, adjustment, and private understanding that rarely make it into headlines.